Thank you very much indeed. Now, I think it's time that we've got some people in these chairs. They're looking very lonely here. Just to remind you that we're going to have questions, obviously, in a moment. If you wanted to and preferred to ask questions via the web, you can do. If you go onto the website of the Stakeholder Forum, which I've just lost now, you can send me a message this way and I can ask a question. Otherwise, of course, we will have the microphone. So, our speakers today, one of our speakers called this an epic-sized panel. It is. Sandra Bršec is representing patients from the International Diabetes Federation Europe. Welcome to you. Magda Chlebus is the Director of Science Policy at EFPIA. Magda, hello. Beatriz da Silva Lima is the Chair of the IMI Scientific Committee, representing the academic community. Ruxandra Draghia-Akli is Director of Health Directorate of DG Research and Innovation. Hello to you. Henry Fitt is the Head of Best Evidence Development at the European Medicines Agency. Henry, so representing the regulators. And Gunnar Sandberg, the Chair of the IMI States Representatives Group, so representing the member states. And Skentelbery is the Secretary General of the European Biotechnology Network, so the small biotech firms, a very important voice, particularly for this next session. So a round of applause for our speakers before you start, I think. Just to give you a little bit of encouragement before you start. Sandra, where are you? You see, the panel's so big, I can't find anybody. You've been involved, I know, from the very beginning of more or less of IMI, so you really know it well. If we're going into the next phase, what do you think needs to really be done differently? What sticks out in your mind?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. There are some things that are going to be done differently, and Rudolf have highlighted them. But if they are to pick some which are really important, I would put first the fact that now the initiative is opened to other industrial sectors, which will allow for multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary approaches to really tackling problems from different points of view.
So when you say other sectors, you mean what sort of ICT type people? What sort of sectors?
So for instance, medical devices, in vitro diagnostics, animal health, vaccine manufacturers, they are going to all be able to contribute on the industrial side to delivering the goals of IMI.
And do you think that for them it will be, again, having to make the adjustment that so many of the partners have had to make to have this big collaboration, or are they used to working in the same sort of partnerships with big pharma and with the Commission?
For years and years, we have funded collaborative research, and the various stakeholders have been used to work together. I think that the IMI-1, one of the main achievements of IMI-1, and I know that we are always talking about the scientific achievements, is to open this conversation among the different stakeholders, put them at ease, and create the framework that allows the collaboration. So, for instance, the intellectual property frame that has been developed for IMI will be IMI-2 has created or underpinned the open innovation model.
And just generally, the whole system should be more streamlined this time, because I think that was one of the teething problems, understandably, at the beginning, was that everyone talked about its complexity. Bit by bit, that has been ironed out, has it? I mean, do you think it will be simpler for people to take part?
We hope so.
Yeah, I think everyone hopes so.
In fact, Horizon 2020, which is the current research and innovation program, have made the pledge of simplifying it for the stakeholders, and by and large, with very few exceptions that are geared towards acknowledging the differences in the different industrial sectors in the various joint undertakings, are the same. So we will have the same rules for participation, be it that you are applying to our collaborative projects in an program or in IMI. One of the main simplification is the reimbursement rate. So we will funding rate of 100%, irrespective of what entity is going to be funded. Obviously, that doesn't apply to EFPIA members that do not receive funding, but
that was one of the more controversial points with some of the academic institutions, wasn't it, in the beginning, that they couldn't, they said they couldn't afford to find, they couldn't find that 25%, that shortfall to be able to participate.
I think that many academic institutions were able to find the 25%. Many of the countries also offered to bridge that gap and supply the funding that was absent from the framework program. I think that the main gainers, if you wish, are the small and medium enterprises that in fact now are benefiting from this 100% funding rate plus the 25% indirect costs. So they don't have to bother finding another source of funding.
Maybe I could bring Beatriz in on this. Beatriz, just to remind you, it's Professor of Pharmacology and Pharmacotoxicology at Lisbon University, as well as being the chair of the IMI Scientific Committee. Yours is a relatively small institution, I suppose, in global terms. I mean, what about that? Did you have problems with finding the 25%? I mean, was that funding issue an issue for an organization like yours?
Well,
I think it is on.
It's working? Yeah. Good afternoon. I would say yes. My university, in particularly even my institution, my faculty, this has been, and especially in the recent years with all these problems and these crises that affect one countries more than others, we had really these difficulties. And well, I would say it's not directly related only with the framework program, whatever, but even more very recently, we had one difficult grant application for which exactly was the problem. We had to get more than 20%. Very difficult.
So it's good news. It's good news for you then that the system is changing.
It's very good news. Very good news. Yes.
And how do you anticipate that your organisation could be involved in the next round of IMI?
Well, my organization, the University of Lisbon, has been not very involved in IMI projects. I would say organizations in Portugal in general. So IMI 1 was not really very much tackled. Actually, my own faculty and myself, I have been in a training. I am in a training program, Safe Climate. But this so because different structures for science granting, and we had a national structure that was more or less making people apply better there than coming internationally, which demands also a lot of networking and international networking, which exists, but not in the right way, just to get this consortium. And it was not easy for the people to understand how to join the consortia and how to network in this perspective. Of course, that now for MI2 and for Horizon 2020, so everybody is becoming aware, even because the structure is encouraging. So the entities, universities, the different universities, and research institutes to apply. So my anticipation and my hope is that there's a higher interest, and because I would say somehow it has to be. It's mandatory for the survival of the research systems in my country, and I guess in many other countries, that we start using more European funds.
And do you think this whole sort of partnership is a sort of mega trend which people are adjusting to? Do they know how to adjust to it? The idea of consortia that seems to be the way forward in so many now.
I would say that this is the great idea, and this is the great driver of IMI that is maybe the secret for its big success. It's taking people out of their silos, out of their own areas of research, putting the different areas of research together with common goals, and in particular is this big, huge brainstorm that can be done through inside the consortium and intra-consortia, directed medicines development. So somehow everybody who was thinking about developing medicines one way or the other, researching in medicines, suddenly they got a framework to work together. And on the other hand, there were others who might be working for that or having skills that could be applied and had never thought about that. And suddenly they are like driven into this initiative because really it's powerful and it's it's about human health one way. So putting the different areas together and the different components is really.
Magda, from the EFPIA point of view, Magda Chlebus, who is Director of Science Policy at EFPIA, where do you see, what do you think that didn't work last time that has to be changed? Or you can turn that round if you want and say, you know, what did work and has to be really, really pursued?
I would definitely it round completely, because I'm actually quite tired of hearing people asking, so what didn't work last time that we can improve?
It's a typical journalist question, isn't it? To always go for the negative.
So let
positives.
Yes, exactly. I think that we heard today several times that IMI was a trendsetter, that we've been doing something that didn't exist elsewhere. And I really like to insist on that. People think that IMI is obvious, that it was set once forever, that it's obvious that the collaborations, you know, that the system works. It should have worked 10 years ago when we started the discussions. It was unprecedented. And still today, it continues to be new. And the reason why it continues to be new is because we are always out of our comfort zones in IMI.
I mean, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in some of those early meetings when you were side by side with your competitors and having to sort of share information. I mean, it really was quite groundbreaking at the beginning.
It completely was, and agreeing at a time of where competitors would want to work together resulted in a rather stretched program of work originally, where we were talking about technologies, but we're not really addressing the large-scale challenges that and the serious challenges, societal challenges that we can develop, that we can address today, because we've built more trust amongst ourselves, because we can now expose our weaknesses and our opportunities, our strengths. We can define jointly what the questions and challenges are, not just amongst ourselves, but together with the society. We have a dialogue with the healthcare authorities, with the regulators. You saw Richard presenting the WHO report as being taken as a actually starting point for us to define our priorities. So today many things are possible because some original trust and common understanding was developed. So originally it wasn't so easy. Today it's much easier. But is IMI a standard process? I would say everything in IMI is not standard except of the processes, which are very standardized, but everything else is out of Every project brings a new opportunity and a new type of collaboration. So when we say that IMI has actually set trends for new types of collaboration, it's actually new types of collaborations, because in every project we are facing and witnessing something new. We bring in new elements. We are bringing healthcare perspectives, the regulatory perspectives. We are bringing proprietary assets. We are bringing proprietary data. We are looking into completely new solutions that we couldn't even envision in the past. So now, to your question of what we would do differently, not differently, but what we would like to build on for the future, and the things that we would certainly like to strengthen, is addressing things in a more holistic way. So to take one challenge and to address it from all angles. If we take neurodegeneration, there is not just the scientific problem of understanding neurodegeneration or Alzheimer or Parkinson's, but what happens with once we've resolved the scientific challenge, what happens with the regulation? How, if we go into personalized medicine, would that impact on healthcare delivery? How about the patient? How about the healthcare systems? How about access? All of these things need to be tackled holistically. So I think that what we have learned from the New Drugs for Bad Bugs program is that we need to plan in a more comprehensive way.
That's the antimicrobial program.
That's the antimicrobial program that tells us we need to address everything from early research, discovery, development, regulation through patient access and business models. And I think that one lesson from the past would be that we hope to develop more of such comprehensive programs which would make sense and which would really deliver at the end of the day. Because what is different in IMI compared with other programs also is that we are looking into the real impact. It's not about a publication. It's not about, nice results of data. It is really about, can we make an impact? So another thing which we would like to probably reinforce going forward, and which we have very successfully started in IMI, because the IMI office, the Commission and the industry actually bring their creativity together, it's the implementation, it's the uptake of results, bringing them beyond publication to the medical practice and regulatory practice and to the patients, exactly.
And so from the patient's point of view, Sandra, how does that sound to you? I mean, the IMI one talked about putting the patient much more in the center of things. And I think the plan now is to really try to bring the patient in even more. But is that happening enough from your perspective? I mean, what's your view from a patient's organization perspective?
Yeah, well, hello to everybody. I must say that as a representative of a patient organization, we are delighted to see that things are moving forward, that patients are becoming, that all research and industry is becoming more patient-centered. But the question is, what is patient centricity? I think we've seen in the last 50 years that mostly researchers, industry and healthcare providers were making all decisions about the patients. I think it is now time to include patients and have them as an equal member of the team and, going forward.
But being an equal member of the team, I presume, takes its own responsibilities. So, for instance, if you're having earlier access to drugs, there might be the possibility that you're having to accept that there could be an extra risk that you have to take. So, it's a bit of a give and take situation, I presume.
Of course, we do believe that regulatory agencies are our guardians, but at the same time, we have to see what is the level of that care. So we would like more access to new medical trials and to be able to be there. But on the other hand, we've been listening to a couple of examples yesterday of people who've been at the clinical trials, and their opinion was, and the result, at the end, they didn't get any information on the actual trial. So this to be changed. At the same time, it would be nice to see that administratory work and paperwork would be, kind of, it's taking long. And as patients, we are a little bit impatient.
I mean, I know that patient groups are incredibly well informed on your particular disease area. But overall, do you think, though, that patient groups perhaps need maybe some training or some sort of sense of to be part of the system? Do you think that there should be something to help you?
Of course, but a lot of people don't know what actually patient organizations do. The main goal of patient organization is to educate patients, to get them involved. I represent IDF, International Diabetes Federation for Region Europe, and it's an organization that covers 66 national organizations around Europe, and globally we cover 250 organizations, which is a lot. And we do represent both people with diabetes, but also the healthcare providers. So we do put a lot of effort in education, in awareness of diabetes in this case, and we do try a lot. So I do think that patient organization is a spread hand of all sides, and it should be more, the whole research thing should be more patient-centric, definitely.
Henry Fitt, maybe I could bring you in, because Sandra says that, do you have a microphone? There's one here. She said that the regulators are the patient's guardians. Do you think that in your dealings with IMI, are you actually putting the patients into your systems and your projects and your thoughts?
Absolutely. I think over the past few years, the agency has engaged more and more with patient organizations. We have a Patient and Consumers Working Party, which is very active. We consult them on sort of wording for changes and the package leaflet. We consult them in the writing of the public assessment summaries. They are part of some of our working parties and the Pharmacovigilance Risk Assessment Committee, which is the most recently created committee at the agency, the PRAC. So we have two full members there. There are discussions into how they might be integrated as well into some of the CHMP, which is the committee at the agency, which ultimately decides whether a medicine is approved or not. We are aware that they are part of the IMI projects. We are leading an IMI project. There is a patient representative organization there. There is a patient representative on the external advisory board. So yes, we are involved in patients.
And your role generally as a regulator with IMI, I mean, how has it changed as the project has developed, and how do you want to see it evolve in the next thing? Because I presume that there's potentially a conflict of interest here if you're supposedly working on projects with the pharmaceutical industry, the people that you are meant to be kind of controlling.
Well, I found Magda's intervention quite interesting, and when she referred to comfort zone. And certainly back in, I think, was it 2006, 2007, when IMI started, it was a completely new beast for everyone, but also for the regulators. And, well, it's supported by the European Commission, and it's also supported by one of our main stakeholders, EFPIA. So we obviously realized that we had to engage somehow. So one of the first things we did was we realized that many of the outputs of IMI, in terms of biomarkers and new methods that we've been hearing about this morning, well, that if these biomarkers are developed with public money and then ultimately regulators don't accept them, well, it's to a certain extent it's a waste of public money. So we developed through our scientific advice group a procedure to qualify methodologies and biomarkers, particularly with IMI in mind, but not exclusively. And that has picked up over the years. So that is one aspect that going into IMI2 we would like to see potentiated. We've been working with EFPIA and with the IMI office to raise awareness of this procedure that IMI Research Consortia have. There's a webinar on our website and on the IMI website.
So do you have to be brought in at an earlier stage, effectively? Is that what you
Well, you certainly have to engage with regulators at an early stage. We've heard about sort of quite generous funding for some of these projects, but it's a finite funding and the duration of the project is finite. So if you start thinking about this at the end of your project, then you probably won't have enough money to sort of gather the data package and go through the regulatory procedure. So yes, you do have to start at an early stage. We also provided comments and suggestions to the strategic research agenda, which, as Richard mentioned, is the document on which the IMI2 and the research will be based.
And why did you see yourself as a body to be looking at suggesting priorities?
Well, we are, I mean, at the end of the day, many pharmaceutical products, and certainly all the innovative pharmaceutical products will come to the European Medicines Agency for approval. So we are ideally placed to see what the issues are during the evaluation, what the issues are with the biomarkers, with the endpoints that have been chosen, with the trial designs, with measurements. So we are in a good position to advise on what some of those unmet needs are. And again, we've been liaising with IMI and with EFPIA as to what some of those unmet needs are from our perspective.
Okay. Claire Skentelbery is the Secretary General of the European Biotechnology Network. Just remind us what that is. And basically, it's building partnerships, so it's all very much the same sort of thing that's going on with IMI. Tell us.
Yes, very much so. We were founded on the principle, we have the mission to build partnerships. And so for us, programs like IMI, Horizon 2020, are the perfect tools. Because as Magda says, you have to move people out of their comfort zone to build truly productive partnerships.
So you're representing small biotech companies?
No, we represent all sorts of organisations, but SMEs have always had a place close to my heart, and I tend to be a bit of a wasp at the picnic of workshops that talk about SME involvement, because often they're incredibly keen, they're incredibly able, but the logistical hurdles to getting involved in large projects tends to weigh against them. Whereas in Horizon 2020, the project's quite small. A small company can drive an idea and build a small consortium, drive it through to completion. Within programs like IMI, they need a bit more help because the project's, 100 million euros in size, and you're going up against some of the biggest universities in the world to try and get in. So we try to help small organizations gain a better foothold inside consortia, work together to create larger consortia with more small companies driving them themselves. It's just because there's so much IMI has to offer and so many ways that SMEs can contribute towards it, because they're perfectly adapted to fast-moving, very responsive, very reactive, and they just need a helping hand to get inside larger consortia.
Because people don't know they exist very often. I mean, that's hard. I presume that's what you help with, the visibility of this organisation.
Yes, in many ways, yes. I mean, they spend most of their lives out on the road selling themselves, finding partners. But of course, when you're moving, when you need to talk to clinical research units, pharmaceutical companies, universities, you're talking to organisations that you don't usually often speak with. So to gain the bigger picture, a small company with a finite budget and a finite lifetime for that budget doesn't have time to spend 18 months delivering a large, an 80 million euro consortium. They have to move faster than that. And so anything that can help them do that, we will do, because they have a massive benefit to bring.
And Ruxandra touched upon the intellectual property issues. Do you feel happy that that's all sort of solid enough for tiny companies, often tiny in comparison to some of the EFPIA type companies, to really feel happy to enter in these sort of partnerships?
To be honest, I've never really had a problem with the whole IP platform. It's the same as her, framework has the same as a similar platform. And to be honest, if a small company, you live and die based on the IP and the knowledge that you have. And if you can't protect that or plan sufficiently sensibly enough within a large consortium, you're going to lose what you have anyway. It's not about large companies preying upon your IP, because it's not the situation. And you have to go in and protect yourself and make sure and position yourself well. And that is the responsibility of the small company. You can't stay in business if you can't protect what you have.
So what sort of ideas are coming out of these sort of companies that could join in potentially with a new project for
we're very fortunate. We've managed to bring together a number of small companies into one of the big anti-infective programs, which is great. So we spent sort of 9 months looking under stones in Europe for interesting anti-infective technologies, particularly within small companies, to bring in. And they bring in a different way of thinking about things, brand new technology platforms that can overcome some of the previous bottlenecks that there were in product development. And the nice thing is they can react quickly. They don't need a 3-year postdoc to come and contribute to an IMI project. They can switch something on one day, switch it off 6 months later. And so they can be active immediately. So their diversity is enormous, and their ability to act quickly is very high.
Gunnar Sandberg, sorry, last but not least in this big panel. You're the program manager for the health division of Vinnova, which is the Swedish government agency for innovation systems. And basically your department is dealing with IMI in Sweden, is that correct?
That's correct.
But you're also representing you're the chair of the IMI State Representatives Group. So that group is basically the voice of the member states at IMI level.
Yes, that's true. So I'm kind of the messenger for the member states in the governance structure in IMI. And so I'm trying to collect all the ideas and trying to spread out the consultation process so everyone have the time to consult about new programs and topics and so on.
So I presume that obviously everybody's happy that it's continuing the program, but you are, I suppose, in a way representing the taxpayer are you?
Yeah.
And so how does that work in people's minds, the idea that you're partnering with the big pharmaceutical companies, the perception of the pharmaceutical companies, is that old news now? Is that people?
I think, I mean, from the beginning, I mean, that was mentioned before, IMI was a pilot program, so I think it was a lot of problems in the beginning, and it was hard to sell IMI to scientists, and because they were not really satisfied with this payment procedure at 75% and then 20% overhead was not covering all the costs, so they have to pay maybe 10% from their own money. We look forward to this new system in Horizon 2020 that we can have up to 100%, and they were also discussing about the IP rules and so on, but everything has been improved more and more, so I think we can say now that this pilot project has been a kind of a successful pilot project at the end. So if it goes on in that direction with more improvements, I think IMI will be a good program.
I presume that some member states have got more of the projects and programs about IMI
That's
than
something
others.
we have seen that member states with their own big pharma industry have a little bit more successful in the projects. Some of the, what you call before, new member states have problems to participate. And I think information is very important, more information than now, and maybe that's one of our duties to do, and going around Europe and trying to sell in the IMI programs as much as possible. It's important.
But I mean, we heard earlier that there's international interest in this system because that nobody's got this sort of partnership at this sort of scale elsewhere. Is that what you're hearing too? I mean, is there a buzz about it, an excitement?
I mean, there's a lot of questions where, of course, they are global, like antimicrobial resistance, but even there, some countries in Europe have different meanings about this in-kind contribution from outside Europe. So some of them are a little bit more restrictive against that. Mm-hmm. A country like Sweden are maybe more open to global participation in the IMI programs.
Okay, please, anyone who would like to join in with the conversation, please put your hand up. Any questions, any thoughts, any ideas about how you think that IMI 2 should develop? And I must have a look to see whether we've got anything coming in from the web. Yes, we have a gentleman there. Do you have a microphone?
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, my name is Andrea Corazza. I work for Global Health Advocates. Good afternoon, everybody. So I would like to go back a bit to the issue of challenges, because the things that are working are already working. So let's focus a bit more on the challenges. There are many that have been identified by civil society, by research institutes, by the IMI evaluation itself, and goes from governance to transparency of this initiative, but also on access to research data and access to the final products. But I would like here to focus more on poverty-related and neglected diseases that have been identified by the WHO report on priority medicines as one of the main priority for Europe and the world. And I was wondering, IMI has not addressed that problem, has not worked much on that. I was wondering what can be the role of IMI 2 on financing research and development for poverty-related and neglected diseases. Thank you.
What was the last bit? Did you hear that, Ruxandra? For neglected diseases, yes.
So you know very well that we do have not only one partnership, but multiple partnerships that we have fostered in Horizon 2020, including a public-public partnership that is looking at clinical trials and implementation research, so exactly the issues that you were mentioning for poverty and neglected infectious diseases, so HIV, malaria, tuberculosis, but also the entire portfolio of neglected infectious diseases. It is called the European and Developing Countries Clinical Trial Partnership. It is a partnership with the member states, and there we would welcome projects in this area. On the other hand, in the context of IMI, the antimicrobial resistance program addresses part of that issues, and with a new platform on vaccines, obviously that is also a possibility.
Yeah, I can only confirm that indeed IMI 2, if you look at its priorities, would have a bigger program on infection controls, and under this program we would be looking this, and and variety of them, not just on antimicrobial resistance, but at infectious diseases in general. So I would say we don't exclude anything, but other programs can do much better, because when you talk about neglected diseases, you want to do studies in those countries which are affected by those diseases. Obviously, IMI might not always be the best place to do that. This being said, a lot of results of research that would be conducted in IMI will benefit every type of medicines, no matter which therapeutic area. So we just hope that by doing better science and by creating new tools, all this would actually benefit also research into neglected diseases that was mentioned in the question.
Did you want to come in, Beatriz?
Well, just to agree with Magda in this last statement that going beyond the neglected diseases, it is expected, and IMI 1 has been going very much in that direction, and I'm sure IMI 2 will consolidate that. That let's say the paradigms for development will be being how do you call it, upgraded possibly, and possibly driving in the direction of helping to solve the development for multiple aspects. Somehow you might say this is common sense, but it's it's common to say that when you go into the path for like precision medicine, personalized medicine, you are going through the path for kind of unlike indications for every type of disease. So there might be some aspects that will be applied very much to all the areas, and therefore you will have, of course, the target identification that might be specific for each area, but a lot of what is the, let's say, the changing paradigm that hopefully IMI2 will lead to will apply for most of these situations.
Gentleman there, and there's a lady here afterwards, please.
So IMI has been exceptionally good at bringing together the
Sorry, where are you from?
Sorry,
please?
Alistair Gaw, Technology Strategy Board with the UK Innovation Agency to fund industry. So when we talk to our members, what you've got here is great. Regulators sitting with the researchers and the industry. One of the biggest issues is adoption of new technologies and new treatments and new care pathways after you've delivered the regulatory compliance aspects. Is there any aspect within IMI which will address encouraging adoption by the healthcare providers? Because that is still the valley of death of getting new innovation accepted and widespread.
You are absolutely right. We face in medicines research and development several translational challenges. The first one is from science to regulation. The second is from regulation to the patient and through the healthcare systems. And indeed, IMI 1 is already looking into aspects related to health technology assessment. So it goes far beyond the simple mere regulatory step, which is essential, but which does not guarantee any deployment of these new therapies and new prevention agents in the healthcare systems. The antimicrobial, so we are looking into these aspects that go far beyond the regulatory step. The second point is that we are looking also at, when Richard mentioned business models, how to, in the area of antimicrobial resistance and development of new antibiotics, how do we actually make sure that we can provide those treatments to the patients that need them, and at the same time secure continued investment in these areas by the pharmaceutical industry. These business model types projects would be an integral part of future development of in IMI. Why? Because personalized medicine, which is in the focus, does actually require new healthcare solutions. Healthcare delivery, even healthcare system organization might require some changes if we look into more stratified or personalized type of medicines that would be delivered. So the simple answer to your question is absolutely yes.
Henry, do you have a view from the regulator's point of view? Here we've got a mic. Oh, you've got it.
Yes, I mean, the gentleman there has raised a very valid point, and it's, I suppose it's to a certain degree questionable how useful a regulatory approval is if
it can't go beyond that.
If the medicine is not then reimbursed at a national level, which effectively means that it won't be used or won't be accessible to most patients. For the past 3 or 4 years, the the European Medicines Agency has been engaging actively with health technology assessment bodies in different fora. And we have, in fact, we've recently published guidance for public consultation on parallel scientific advice between the European Medicines Agency and the HTA bodies, meaning that companies will be able to benefit from discussions in parallel with the regulators, and we will discuss the regulatory requirements, and with the HTA bodies, and where they will discuss the more sort of HTA-related real-life outcome requirements. So, I mean, absolutely, this is something that we need to look into. We recently published as well on our website a pilot project on adaptive licensing, and that will also engage with, we will engage with a number of stakeholders there. And one of the stakeholders,
when patients have access to medicines.
The idea is to look at ways in which, if you like, a more restricted regulatory approval can be granted, and allowing a sort of a progressive. It's a progressive enlargement of the indication, if you like, assuming that the data are there to support that. Yeah. So that would involve close with HTA bodies and with patients as well.
Sandra, did you want to say a word on this?
I think that this is a real problem for valorization of results from all programs related to research and innovation. And what we can do through all our research and innovation programs is to provide the evidence. We have to remember that, in fact, all these assessments are done at the national level. What we can do is provide those national authorities with the new business models, with the HTA assessments, with adaptive licensing. At the end of the day, the evidence has to be so strong that it will be taken up by the member states. And I think that one of the beauties of the IMI program is that this evidence comes from very different perspectives. And it's put all together, and the stakeholders are speaking with one voice. So most probably that evidence will have a much bigger impact than
Are you saying that if the evidence only comes from the pharmaceutical companies, that people don't trust it?
It's not that they don't trust them, but of course it's a very different issue if the evidence is endorsed, for instance, by the patients, academic investigators, maybe a different type of analysis is also provided. So also by the various industrial partners working in collaboration with each other.
Yeah, I can see that. Yes, lady here.
So Deborah Brown, I come from Biomérieux, which is a large in vitro diagnostic company. So obviously we're very happy to hear that
you're going to be part of it.
MI2 is going to be open to the IVD industry, especially as we feel it's an important sector in precision medicine, also in antibiotic resistance. I would like to know a little bit more how you envision our participation and how that's going to happen. Thank you.
There are plenty of ways in which companies can get engaged. First, if they are a smaller size, and that companies that are eligible for funding, there is a much broader range of companies eligible for funding, because any company that has a turnover below 500 million euro and no longer 50 million euro can actually be eligible for funding. So the first thing is that many more companies can get engaged on the applicant side and receive funding, and therefore be directly eligible for a participation. Now, how to engage with the pharmaceutical companies for bigger companies, and to define programs and projects, and to propose programs and projects? It's very simple. It's just enough to come with ideas to us and to engage, and to have a dialogue, to express interest in the areas which are covered by the strategic research agenda. And it's as simple as that, as giving a phone call. For the participation itself, mission set, there is money that is set aside for participation of other sectors. So Ruxandra would certainly tackle that, but I would say that in terms of how to influence the agenda and the type of projects and to explore how to provide contributions, we would be working through thematic groups in the 5 or 6 first big questions, like neurodegeneration, infection controls, or metabolism or immunology. And as soon as a company is really interested to engage with us, you contact us and we come back to you. And another way is that we will be also reaching out directly to companies from these other sectors, IT, diagnostics, imaging, because for many of the programs we are building, participation from those other sectors is a condition sine qua non. So it would be a two-way street conversation.
Claire, do you want to come in from you're representing
yes.
the smaller voices?
Just briefly, I mean, in IMI 1, it was sometimes quite strange that the larger size companies, the ones sort of fell in the middle, couldn't take part, because often in the programs there was a gap that was obvious for their skills to come in. Let's say, you know, professionalize or scale up of something, or, you know, latest access to, say, imaging technologies on a more professional level than having to go into an academic situation to get it. So it's really good that they can come in and play a role, because I think sometimes it was a noticeable gap in projects.
Great. Gentleman here.
I'm from Malta, Pierre Schkemer-Rismeyer. I was just wondering, maybe it's worthwhile to do a small study here. I usually like asking for a raise of hands, but I'll leave that in your hands. Since there are the new companies coming in which are not traditional pharma and which are not therefore biologics, I would call them, I wonder how many representatives there are here from non-biologic, non-chemical entities, and also if the universities, their faculties of engineering and of IT and other things are aware of this, and maybe it's something which needs to be very heavily marketed, because definitely now in Malta it was focused on the doctors. It's maybe something interesting.
Basically, you say the word is not getting out there.
I don't know. I haven't heard it myself, let's put it this way.
Okay. Gunnar.
And for the last question about the diagnostic, I think it's important for you to contact your national representative from the SRG group to have information about how it works, to setting up a proposal to IMI and trying to have some advices from us to how to write it and how to proceed the whole way to a successful proposal.
Do you always wait for people to contact you, though? I mean,
yeah,
do you
we
have
a lot of information meetings, sometimes with Michelle Goldman, sometimes alone, and we have setting up kind of a discussions meeting about how to put together a consortium.
Right.
And now the stakeholder questions, what we come up with.
Mm-hmm. Yes, gentlemen. Oh, yes. I think you're on, Chris.
Right, thank you. So training, we would say, is really important, and training was quite well covered in IMI 1, and some of us lucky to be involved in that. Beatriz mentioned Safe SciMet. Are there any plans for any kind of training which can offer some of the younger scientists the possibility of learning some of the great new science going on around Europe?
What sort of training are you meaning?
Training as in work-based training, but particularly sort of 1 week long courses where they learn from the experts what are the particular aspects of, for example, drug safety in my area, or pharmacological dosing, etc. And there were quite good programs already in the IMI 1, and it would be very encouraging to know that the younger scientists within EFPIA and academia have access to that in IMI 2.
I can probably comment on this. So indeed, in IMI, there is a number of programs on education and training, lifelong learning, postdoc, etc. And Beatriz is on one of those projects. There are 5 or 6 of them. I think that first, IMI 1 isn't finished, and those projects aren't finished, so they would continue. The courses would continue to be developed. We have encouraged the projects also to take their sustainability, or rather what happens with the great substance that they developed, and how would they be sustainably delivered to the future generations as well. And they got together, they came together, and they would think about the sustainability tools. And I think that as far as IMI 2 is concerned, would we build another platform for education and training? I can't say yes or no. We don't know, because we need to see what sustainability plans the current IMI education and training projects would come with. But there is certainly one challenge, is that a lot of new science, especially as we are talking about changing the regulatory paradigm, changing the development paradigm, changing research paradigm. So certainly a lot of new science and would come out of the projects. How we are going to inject them into the existing platforms, I think that would be a reflection process that we would need to conduct. And we've started discussions about it with Michelle Goldman, who is certainly a great champion for this reflection.
Yes, gentlemen.
Yes,
thank
hello.
You. Yes, it's on.
Yes, hello. Manuel Giaf, CEO from Biomodeling Systems. I'm SME. I see that EME2 is an improvement from EME1, but what happens when you're SME and you don't fit exactly to your big, categories or things, or if you think things must be done differently? For example, if you believe that Alzheimer, beta, and tau are only unspecific consequences, if you have a treatment that is playing on astrocytes to decrease the dose of psychotropes, we have a company there, or fighting against bacteria with bacteriophages, you see that these are new therapies, not new drugs, and they combine different things. And how can it be possible to define how to fit to these programs where you do things differently in a way? But you prove that it is working.
How do you get your voice heard? Ruxandra.
First, IMI, like Horizon 2020, is a challenge-based approach. So you're not going to have super specific topics where everything and anything, it's going to be predefined. But of course, the challenge is put forward. It is for the community to come forward with their expressions of interest. And those expressions of interest are going to be internationally peer-reviewed. And the best of all these combinations of ideas are going to be married, as Richard said, with the industrial consortium. And in here comes also a part of the answer for the colleagues before, because let's say, taking the example of the Alzheimer, one can say that in one of these big Alzheimer programs, one can have a drug approach, imaging biomarkers that can be taken up by the imaging industry. I don't know what biologic that can enter in a different work program. So these areas of work, rather than very specific topics, are what we need to focus on. Secondly, and the very good news is that IMI, like the rest of the challenges under Horizon 2020, will have to have at least 20% of SMEs that are involved in the program. So thank you, Claire. So we are looking forward to your ideas.
Gunnar, you want to just and then I'll come to Magda.
I can come back to the same what I thought. I mean, I think it's very important to contact the national representative, and we have all the reference groups. For example, we are from Sweden. We have connected to Sweden Bio, which is taking care of all the SMEs in Sweden. So if you have kind of comments to the draft program, we are trying to collect that from the SMEs and trying to make some adjustment if it's possible. I mean, even if it's everything is quite hard to change, but there is a chance to make small adjustments in the text, which might suit you better than
Claire, you wanted to come in and then Magda.
Yes, right. Just to really comment, so often we see this in our current IMI, in that some things are excluded from, say, interesting anti-infective platforms that we're looking at, because possibly a slightly conservative approach to where larger companies would like to see products come from. And it's quite difficult to change that because, of course, we're talking about very different cultures. And so where we encourage organizations there is you have to look. If you can't find it within IMI, or you don't think it's going to fly within IMI, you need to look at the smaller projects such as Horizon 2020, where you can build the topic yourself. Because it's difficult to change everybody else's mind in the room if you've got a great technology, but everybody says, no, we did that 20 years ago and it doesn't work.
And I think the same really is the same for the patients group, isn't it? I mean, how do they also get involved? Do you have to wait until you're invited, or do you somehow can take initiatives?
Well, of course, we do take initiatives, but what I would like to say that talking about diabetes, we do know that it's a huge problem, and that we usually hear about numbers and complications and everything. But what is most important that we really need to be patient-centric, and we are more than just the patients. This morning I came in this room, a list of participants, and my name is there first, and it says under organization, well, or a position, it says a patient. It was interesting to me to be here only as a patient, but you know, and it was kind of, I didn't feel really good at the beginning, but then I thought, well, this is something we are fighting for. We're fighting for the empowerment of patients, and it's not, we are much more than patients.
Well, you're also the financial director of I didn't say that, of a construction company, I think, aren't you? So you are a lot more than a patient.
But of course, what I'm trying to say, that we have our daily jobs, we have different lifestyles and different routines, and what is most important, that we do look at patients as individuals, and we do need to concentrate, both researchers, healthcare professionals, to patients as individuals, because we do need different medicine. I need different medicine, medical devices than perhaps a retired person with type 2 diabetes or a child in an elementary school. So those approaches need to change, and I do encourage both researchers and medical healthcare providers and all stakeholders to really do put patient in the center. Because if the patient is in the center, this means that you could get relevant information from the very, first hand from the patient.
Magda, maybe you could comment on that and also this gentleman's point.
I think the ideas can come from wherever. And the programs aren't built and fixed in a way that they cannot be completely influenced. Claire is right. It's very difficult to change things once they are done, but they are not completely done yet, I would say. So inspirations can come from various sources, and ideas might be considered if we find a critical mass of companies that want to support it, because you remember that EFPIA companies are not receiving any funding but are requested to invest their resources, so they would invest in the areas where they can actually do something. This being said, public funding goes to the most incredible ideas, so it doesn't mean that things are impossible if not planned up front. Many things can come also in the applications. But just to make the point, ideas, programs are not fixed and ideas can come from wherever. And to reinforce Claire's point as well, if they do not fit with IMI, because not everything would work in IMI, not everything is fit for IMI, then there are many other instruments where these ideas can be done. Horizon 2020 and bilateral collaborations. Remember that many companies are actually interested in engaging bilateral collaborations with smaller companies that have these brilliant ideas. Maybe it doesn't get traction with many people, but it can get traction with one or two companies, and then organizations like Claire's or like EBE, the specialized group within EFPIA, that is creating business opportunities for smaller players. It's a nice place to come and to test these ideas.
Thank you. Yes, let me just give you this microphone. Yes, just to finish off that point.
Yeah, because I am also in professional organization in France, Lima and other things, and we are testing the disagreement of experts as a necessary condition for disruptive innovation. So when we find people who are disagreeing, in fact, the experts, we are going to switch to another process where there will be the future users of this innovation, patients, clinicians, and people where the technology sometimes comes from. In order to have, 75% of the process, it's incremental innovation, and I think that the process is clear and simple. But for this disruptive innovation, if we don't have a specific process in order to protect and to improve, so this is an idea we're testing, and some people in France, and I think also Jan Smith, I spoke with him about this, is a way maybe not to transform everything, because I agree with you, will not change the pharma industry, but there are possibilities to, like the Troisième venture division, in the past, I know it very well, where we give time and some money for this team to give the incremental information to see if it's right or not. Because as I said, disagreement of experts is only necessary but not sufficient.
Thank you very much for your point and interesting discussion after it. Gentleman there.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm Pim de Boer from the Netherlands. One remark and one question. The remark is in addition to patient involvement. I think that having a patient partnership should be, well, it should be obvious, but it isn't. So I think it needs a kind of coordination to achieve this. My question is another one. If you look at the IMI2 document, then the document states that, well, the priorities are disease-related. So chunks, the pillars of diseases. Now, many of the people with a chronic disease suffer from multiple diseases, up to 5 or 8 different diseases. How will that be addressed in IMI2? Research on comorbidity across the different pillars.
It does, and I don't think that we are going to work therapeutic pillars. There would be research, I'm sure, that would look into comorbidities and things like combination therapies, for example, or multi-therapies. I'm sure that we are going to look into it because this is a real challenge. It is a real challenge from the point of view of research and development of medicines. It creates a lot of challenges in the development process. So we are going to certainly to look into these matters, and I would like to reassure everyone who thinks about ideas that are not therapeutic area specific. We are certainly not going to do in IMI2 just therapeutic area specific programs. Otherwise, we wouldn't develop new tools and new methodologies that would benefit everyone. We may develop them in one pillar, but then we would make sure that they can be replicable everywhere. Remember that IMI is not just about solving the problem for one consortium and one group of people. It is about solving a systemic problem in the industry. I think we sometimes forget about it. Hence the intellectual property policy that allows access beyond consortium. Hence also our desire to build programs that would help reapplying the tools between the therapeutic pillars and to build also programs that are more sort of horizontal.
So it really is a joined up approach.
Yes, absolutely.
Just one word that would respond to both previous comments. What you were just talking about in the field of disruptive innovation would fit very well with our SME instrument, which is very similar to as a SBIR instrument in the United States. It is one company that can get funded in the health area up to 5 million euros to develop that proof of concept that would allow then that particular project to enter into another type of collaboration, for instance, in the collaboration with the industry. So I would say that the first stepping stool would be that, if you really want to take it. Also, I would encourage everyone to look on the participant portal of Horizon 2020, because unlike the previous framework programs, you have, I don't like it, and I was just talking to Richard, but it's a one-stop shop. You can put your keyword, and then you can find all the programs where areas that you'd like to address can be addressed. For instance, in the work program of 2014 in our cooperation, so in the health, demographic change and well-being challenge, we have topics related to comorbidities. Again, that type of research later on can feed into an eventual IMI program and vice versa. So please use your keywords and use all the instruments, not only one.
Yes, of course, Sandra.
I would just like to say something about the first comment about the patient organization and their involvement. I must say that I completely agree with you. And it is nice that patient organizations are present in all these conferences. I'm new in this. I've become a representative of IDF since December last year. I'm usually in finance sector. But we are being invited, but still don't think we have an active role. And I really wish this will change, and I do hope this will change. So we are going forward, but slowly. So I encourage everybody to
you're not totally convinced when so many companies and so many people say we are putting the patients at the center.
Yeah, we are there. You know, you can see us on the list as patient organizations, but I'm not sure how if our role is active enough in all these initiatives and research.
Okay, well that's an interesting thought. Yes, gentleman at the back there. You need a microphone.
Good afternoon. Olivier Arnaud from GGRF, the patient organization. IMI is, thanks to Michel, advancing a lot with contact with patient organization. And yesterday there was an event which was IMI and GGRF for patients. However, our question is that in one step, and would it be in IMI 2 one move forward, which would be a group of patients which could be active in such IMI 2? It's our questions.
So you'd have them much more involved at it as a permanent, almost as a permanent part of IMI.
Yes, how patient can more. You know, yesterday it was one and really a good step. It was a real involvement. But what could be the next step, which, as had been said before, a group, something which would be real advice?
Well, what could make patients more convinced that you are really listening, that they are really part of the decision-making process?
I think I can maybe start, but everyone can have a view here because we are all potential patients anyway, or even real patients. So I think that first of all, we need to have a much better information to the patients so that they understand what we are doing. And that's key, because many patient organizations may just not understand because the calls are written in a scientific complex language. Patients may not even know what role they can play in all those projects. They may not know about IMI. And you know, the first question is, do we have the right level of information? And I always think that maybe it isn't so, and maybe we should spend more time in appropriate information and appropriate level of language and appropriate maybe targeting also, and more proactive promotion of the information to the patient groups where we see that they might be a benefit. I think we should better explain when we write the projects of where patients, and they can come with other creative ideas, but some basic information of where patients can play an active role in the projects, not just being a subject matter of a clinical trials, but really where they can come and shape.
But I mean, for instance, if you have got a scientific officer and a member state officer at IMI, why don't you have a permanent patient officer or a patient committee?
Interesting thought.
I mean, that's what you would want, I presume. Yeah. Somebody else have a thought on that?
I just can say that in all our advisory groups, patients' representatives are included, and they are, if you wish, permanent. There is not the same patient representative, but they are in absolutely every single one of the advisory groups.
Right, okay. Any other last thoughts, questions? Ruxandra, just one last question. I mean, you know, going away from the kind of just the medical side of things. Obviously, the whole point of all these sort of initiatives is to try to keep Europe up there in the world in terms of research, in terms of development, in terms of jobs, in terms of the economy as well. I mean, do you think that this initiative has really played an important role in that and can continue to do so? I mean, is it a kind of game changer?
Absolutely. I think that because we have set the model of open innovation, because you have seen the copycats, including the NIH, which is typically taking the lead, taking into account the fact they do have a significant budget and they can afford to do this type of initiative. Well, they are now following. At every meeting that we have of the heads of international research organizations, the head of the NIH is asking me, how is IMI? We have heard, Richard, about the desire of setting up an IMI in Japan and in China. So that model is setting the trend. And if you're looking at the projects all put together, from my perspective, they delivered significantly above the state of the art because of this open innovation model. And they're going to continue through the efforts of everyone here today to deliver. And the growth and jobs are, in fact, driven by research and innovation. And I think that that has to be very clear message of all the IMI ambassadors.
Thank you. And Claire, you want to come in just quickly at the end?
Yeah, just really quickly, because I see this from both perspectives, because I also run a network of clusters, and Europe is so good at creating infrastructure, because as part of the European project, it has to defragment all the huge amount of research that goes on in Europe and turn it into something valuable. And really, when you can compare and contrast with other regions in the world, it does it 10 times better than other regions. So when we go to the US and say, hey, shall we do this? Let's do a global program on this. They go, that's amazing. We couldn't have done that. And so Europe really does that. It does a lot of stuff that doesn't show with big headlines, but it creates a huge infrastructure and template upon which things can be built very well.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Sorry, did you want to come in, Magda? No.
I just see that there is a question from the web, and I think that it plays actually very well with what Claire just said. And the question is, you know, are we working with non-EU countries? And actually, I think that IMI makes it possible for Europe to be better positioned in this global collaboration and global research landscape. And yes, we do that. The IMI office is driving a number of memoranda of understanding, agreements, and collaborations with other initiatives of this kind. IMI can only make Europe stronger in this global competition. It's not about being protective and being alone or difficultly for Europe. Is by doing something for Europe, positioning us better in the global landscape and competing much better with our, and collaborating much better with our competitors. And I should say, we should stop saying always yes, but. We should just be proud of what we have, strengthen it. Constructive criticism is always good. We are not at all against hearing the constructive criticism. But we should be extremely proud of what we have, because others envy us, and we should just build on that for the future.
Great. Oh, sorry, Beatriz.
Thank you. Well, it just came to my mind in relation to what you said, that Europe is so good on making like this networking. I would say that indeed, in the regulatory framework for drug development and approval, it was from Europe that International Conference of Harmonization was emerging, and it was emerging somehow based on the model that Europe has done so well on harmonizing the regulatory framework among member states. So now, here we are again. So then, International Conference of Harmonization was built somehow based on that model and that encouragement. So now, here we are again with this model, which is putting together multiple stakeholders for research in Europe and already going beyond that. And then we see the models emerging also in another region. So why not thinking about one of these in the future for a kind of international harmonization, which might not be harmonization, but somehow a huge interaction, which will allow putting all efforts together at a broader, in a broader way, that would, for sure, foster innovation much faster and for the benefits of
There's a challenge for you, Michelle. Well, thank you very much indeed to all of our panelists and to all of you there. Thank you very much. And Michelle Goldman is just going to make a few concluding remarks.
So we are running late. I will be very short. But first of all, I would like to thank the two keynote speakers and the panelists and the moderator of this lively discussion this afternoon. I'm sure that several of you in the room at this stage, you are attracted by the new opportunities offered by IMI2, and you are wondering, so how can I be part of this? How can I apply to IMI2 projects? So you have to know that the first call for proposal will be launched on the 9th of July, and that we are actively working with EFPIA, with the Commission, indeed in finalizing the first topics that will be announced soon. I really urge you to look regularly at our website, because we regularly post important information about these future topics. You can also follow us on the social networks, Twitter, LinkedIn. And obviously, as said by Gunnar, in each country there is an IMI member states representative who can also help you. And that's really important, that you don't wait even for the official call to really prepare yourself and to look at the opportunities. So, second point, I have been asked by several of you whether the slides shown this morning during the stem cell session will be available. Yes, they are available, and you will be able to download the slides from our website again. So, finally, I would like to thank warmly the IMI team which was involved in the preparation of the Stakeholders Forum. As you can imagine, this is quite a challenge, and as you realize, we had yesterday another important meeting dedicated to patients, so I can tell you that the recent days were quite hectic for our team, and I would especially like to thank Alessandra Pacamicio for our communication team and Eva Zertegren, who was in charge of all the logistic issue, and I'm sure that on our behalf you will say, and we will say together, thank you to both of them. Thank you very much, and have a safe trip home.